I always feel like the eagle has landed when that thing arrives. It's such a triumphant
Absolutely.
thing. And then it's just us two standing here. I mean, it's great to have you here, Noel. But
Thank
people
you.
are so used to my rambling on the internet. So, how are you doing? Did you have a good week since we last saw each other?
Yeah, I did. I had a great week, Zev. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me back. Looking forward to tonight.
I love having you on the show. You're always full of such great insight. Last week was just really fascinating. And tonight we're going to be doing something really interesting. There's a friend of mine that we've been talking for over a year now, I think, online about his ideas about what is going on with the world right now. They're mind-blowing ideas that will change everything that you've probably thought up until tonight. From this day forward, it'll be very, very different. We're going to go step by step with this guy because he's that kind of brilliant. Originally a violinist at a very young age, a child prodigy. At 4 years old, he started playing violin and then became a virtuoso violinist, traveled around the world, mostly in the gospel world, but also otherwise, doing incredible travel and performances, sold 350,000 albums. But that's not why we're talking to him tonight. We're talking to him tonight because as he was traveling around the world, he figured out something really special about how the world operates, like the real secret for what happens in the world. So he's going to explain that to us in about 10 minutes from now. I should warn you that there is all sorts of banging going on upstairs because of some sort of construction. So if you hear that, I apologize. It just happens from time to time on these shows. And I don't know them. So I don't know if I can go and knock on their door and say, hey, you guys, don't do that. And the reason we're talking to David tonight particularly is because we're going to be doing something about the crown. Okay, so why am I talking about cracks in the crown? There is a movement in the world. There's a thing that's changing, and that is probably the most powerful human in the world, or one of the most powerful human in the world is about to change. I mean, we've had the Queen as the head of the British Empire for a while now. Her husband is no longer with us, and it's almost time, one would think, for Prince Charles to assume the throne. That is normally just considered one of these things that just maybe happens, But if you really think about how powerful the throne really is and how powerful the Queen or the King are, then you realize that we're in for fundamental shifts in the way we see the world. And we'll be talking to David about why that is the case. He's got a keen interest in anthropology and understanding how the world has developed. And he'll bring us into a different headspace, into how powerful the King and the Queen of Britain in particular, but all kings and queens are powerful. Any thoughts about the kings and the queens of the world? You're not royal, are you? Secretly masquerading as? Maybe you are, I don't know.
I'm not a royalist, as they say. I know some, and some big fans of The Crown. I'm a fan of the Netflix series, certainly the BBC series. I've met some of them. I've met Prince Harry. I've done events with him. He struck me as a pretty decent kid, and I'm friends with Ella Windsor. And for full disclosure, I've hung out with her in London and stuff. I used to spend a lot of time over there. But
who's she? Sorry,
she's the. Her mother is a sister. She's a Windsor. She's Ella Windsor. Her mother is the one who's always getting in trouble for like wearing the brooches with the blackface and stuff.
Ah, okay.
And she lives in Kensington Palace. So like her mom is the cousin of the Queen, or not the sister. I'm not a royalist, as I said. She's close. She lives like Kensington Palace, like right next door to Kensington Palace, because we dropped her off one night after dinner. Did
you go inside? Did you go inside?
No, but we were staying next door in a hotel. But I'll tell you a funny story. I was there with this rock star who was a big fan of like the royals, and we were at this private dinner, with like an MP's son and all these fancy people. And he invited Ella to the concert we were doing the next night at the Royal Albert Hall. And she goes, yeah, I'd love to attend. And then he turns to me, I'm his road manager. He goes, make sure it happens. So I'm like, okay, Ella, what's your last name so I can put you down for tickets? And she goes, Windsor. And don't worry, I have a box there. I don't need tickets. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a good story.
Yeah.
I once was allowed into the front foyer of Buckingham Palace. You'd think, I was excited. They said, I was trying to set up an interview with Prince Charles for the CBS, I think, or maybe it was CBC, but I think it was CBS. And it was quite a process. It was a long courtship. We had to talk to them for a long period of time, and then we got to know his PR people, and then they finally said, "Well, come over to the UK and meet us in person." So, fly to London, have another series of meetings, and then they said, "You you'll go to Buckingham Palace tomorrow and meet the press secretary of the Queen. And I said, okay, that's fine. So I was excited because I thought maybe they'd give me a tour of the place. But really, they let you into like the front hallway,
right?
And they're like, "Here's some cookies that I think it was Prince Philip's favorite cookies. We got to taste those. And we had some tea, and they said thank you very much. So we drove all the way in, got to see the front bit where the press secretary lives and works, and then we got sent back. But then later on that day, after I met the other press secretary, I had this incredible thing with the Queen and Prince Philip drove by me in cars. And they saw me and they waved at me. So I was like, wait a second, that's not just by accident. That does not just happen by accident. This is part of the process. Sorry. This is part of the process of the ceremony. This is what they do very, very well at Buckingham Palace, and they do very well in the royal world. And that to me is normally very exciting and was really a thrill to get to, at least connect with them. But maybe there's more to the royal world than we realize. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. But first, we should talk about the big news of the day. I think they should just, they should just come up with a new term, Arizona dumb, because everything that's coming out of Arizona right now is just makes me. I love Arizona, by the way. Who doesn't love Arizona? The most beautiful place on the planet, nicest people, just a great, great place. And then on top of it, they've elected this group of people to run their state, and they're making all these terrible decisions. Now, firstly, that the fraud audit, whatever it is that they're doing, this incredibly stupid recount of the recount of the recount of the recount. And then today we found out that their governor has signed a bill into law that's going to make it even harder for people to receive mail-in ballots. So they're just not satisfied with the fact that they're still questioning an election from last November. They're now actually, making it really hard in the future for anyone to vote in any other way other than for Republicans. And I'll go through another few Arizona dumb things, but I know you've got a few too.
Yeah, I do. Well, sorry about that. Well, you spoke about that law, and after the Arizona Senate passed it, the governor signed it within minutes. So they're going full fascist in Arizona because they know that Phoenix, is the largest city in Arizona, and it went Democratic. They were shocked that Biden won in this last election, and like many other states that used to be red that have turned blue, Georgia, for example, they're trying to make sure it never happens again. And there's somehow a fertile breeding ground for the QAnon type, Andy Biggs, who's a representative from there in Congress, who's out of his mind, and it's a scary place, and it's a fertile breeding ground for sort of white supremacist, reactionary nationalist forces to take hold. And they're fighting the tide of reality, which is a diverse population that's going to vote Democratic. So it's sort of like the last gasp of trying to hold on to power. But when they can turn it into law like they are, and we don't stop it, it's a horrifying situation.
Well, it's not only there. That's the thing. The GOP is now making this their strategy. They're basically going to be doing everything they can to break the rules or change the rules or do whatever they need to make sure that they're constantly reelected. Now, the thing is, the people of the world can see this. We can see that you're being anti-democratic. We can see that you're taking away votes from people. We can see that there are no equal rights here. So it's not like you're doing something that's super smart. Just go full fascist, just declare a dictatorship and decide that. These like incremental steps are just embarrassing because it's so obvious what you're doing. It just drives me nuts.
Absolutely. And Stacey Abrams put out a statement right after this thing happened this afternoon. And she said this new law will kick off like 30% of the Latino voters off of the polls because it affects the early voting thing that was so popular in Phoenix, in this county. And we have to do something about it. The pressure was applied to Georgia, and hopefully something will happen there with their sort of draconian voter law. But Arizona, as we saw with this sort of cyber ninjas that they brought in to recount this election, as you mentioned, 6 months after it was, fully decided.
So stupid, really.
Absolutely. And they want to knock on doors. Like they've already been told, no, you can't go knock on people's doors and ask them how they voted. That was shot down last week. And then today, the sheriff just went crazy because they wanted access to the passwords of the voter data in the county, which has people's medical records. It has their voting history. I mean, it's insane to put that kind of information into a company's hand that supported the president in conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I mean, they're breaking the law right now. They're creating all these things that are, and it's not like the former president had a good relationship with the law. He's broken the law many, many times. I don't know if any of him and his associates should be having access to the police passwords or the county passwords. Who knows what they might do if they checked in there. I mean, especially when you look at his other friends from Florida, where Greenberg and Gates have been their misadventures with the law. God knows what they would do in Arizona if they had those same passwords and the same access that Greenberg had to mine Bitcoin. I'm sorry, I'm melding all these stories together, but I just thought I might, because I'm expecting tonight, we're expecting the big announcement about whether he gets a plea bargain tonight. So we'll see whether that happens in the next hour as well. Maybe it's happened. I just haven't noticed. One of the senators, Paul Boyer of Arizona, who was in favor of the original audit in Arizona, now also says he really makes them look like idiots, and indeed they do. They look really stupid in front of the world, and this will get worse and worse. Now, what do you think the end game is here, Noel? What do you think the goal is?
I think the goal is to not participate in national elections. I think, as crazy as that sounds, I think what Georgia is trying to do, what they're trying to do in Maricopa County, is if they don't like the results, they're going to say our guy won anyway. I think they're trying to sort of distance themselves from the democratic process and install sycophants that are loyal to Trumpism and this insanity, and sort of muscle their way in and then assume that no one's going to go in and rout them out, so to speak, because they own that territory. I mean, yesterday there was the state of Virginia was nominating their Republican nominee, the GOP nominee in Virginia. And the guy hired his own security guard to stand outside of the ballot counting room in this hotel. Yeah, and he was like a neo-Nazi dude, And then they found out later that he wasn't the RNC security. He was this private guy that this candidate had brought in to sort of intimidate everybody and stand outside of the door. And he's got the neck tattoos. He looked like he was one of the guys who charged the Capitol. But so it was a show of force, a fascistic show of force. Yeah. That's what they're trying to do is take over and scare everybody. And it worked in Germany to some extent. They're going full bore with this fascism, and they know they have somewhat of an army of support, so to speak.
I think that's one possibility, that they'll just stay, active in the democratic process, but, act fascist. The scarier scenarios are that what they're doing is building up this nationalist base in some of these states, and they might actually decide to just, secede, or not necessarily full secession. They might just say, well, Arizona and Florida and whatever other states are able to build up enough support, well, they're no longer ruled by the president of the United States as we know it. They're ruled by the secondary president, or whatever they want to call Donald Trump. And so that worries me, because I don't think the goal behind that is to actually create a separate part of the United States. It's all about money. It's all about, creating a protectorate over certain industries and being able to tax them and do whatever you need to with them, and not have to pay into the federal pie.
Absolutely. And it also sows discord. Even if they were just to not certify a vote count, they'd throw a wrench into the works that halts the democratic process. That's a lot of what January 6th was about. They were hoping to just disrupt it enough that they couldn't certify Joe Biden on that day. So these individual states can do the same sort of thing, and they can buy time for somebody like Trump so he can further profit, and they can sow discord in America. And as you know, most of these things are being funded by Putin anyway. So it goes to their chaos agents, and when they're doing it on behalf of somebody like Trump, who's represented by Putin, and Putin is giving safe haven to all these cyber criminals. We see what's happening this week with the oil, with the oil pipelines here in the States.
Story.
Right. So imagine all of that stuff happening at once, and it's a perfect storm of very dangerous things, and then markets fall and all kinds of domino effects happen from something like this. I think January 6th was a taste of things to come if we don't really react stealthily and smartly about what's happening now.
I agree with you. I think, we could be seeing the next time if the Congress has to ratify a vote, presidential vote, they may not ratify a president. So they may not agree in 2024 who the next president should be. And then what? That seems to be where we're heading. It seems, if the current Republican Party, as it's constituted, continues to do what it's doing, which is being this fascist outlaw party, that is where we'll be, what we'll be staring at in 2024. And the question is, you talk about being stealth and being responsive, but what do you do when you've got Russia, holding you by the you-know-whats because they have your entire cyber infrastructure rigged? It's that colonial hack was not just coincidental.
Right.
I mean, that was done on purpose and deliberately and done with the intent to disrupt all the gas supply to the eastern seaboard. Right. I mean, there's a huge balancing act we still have to do with the global impact on us and also these local forces that are trying to rule their own states.
I agree with you completely. And what we have to do is we have to pass H.R. 1. We have to end the filibuster. We have to realize what we're up against and who we're fighting against. We can't play nice anymore. This is our one shot in the Senate to make these things happen. If it doesn't happen now under Biden, I don't think it's going to happen. These laws are coming in place now in Arizona and Georgia and stuff because they want to take back the Senate in the midterms.
Now, if HR 1 is published, is ratified and passed as law, does it overtake all these state laws, or does it make them mute, or do they still continue to exist in sort of contrast to, or in opposition to the HR 1? I don't know enough about it, but maybe you do.
I don't either. Yeah. It protects the right of voters. I'm not, I haven't read the legislation, but it goes a long way towards protecting things that are now unprotected and are able to be thrown out at the municipal level. The scary thing here is that these local governments can put in these laws saying you can't give somebody water, it's against the law, all these things to disrupt the democratic process and to kick people off the voter rolls. The crux of all this, DeSantis signed a bill last week in Florida doing the same thing. They're basically trying to disenfranchise black voters. Mm-hmm. It's basically an extension of, Jim Crow era. Like, look, the white guys lost this last time. The conservative Republican white guys lost, and we want to make sure it never happens again because they know they're sort of outnumbered. Progress is coming, and we're in a diverse country now where everybody should have a vote and a voice. And the last bastion of sort of cheating racist white men want to make sure that never happens again. And you have to fight against that. You have to say, nope, your time is, you're not, if you don't get elected fairly, you're not taking office.
100%. Now, it'll be interesting in next year's elections. Is it next year already? I can't believe I'm saying that. Yeah. Yes, next year's elections, they will likely win the House, right? I mean, it seems the way they've gerrymandered a lot of the House seats, especially in Texas, it looks like they may win the advantage in the House. Are they then going to be okay with the Democrats saying, well, no, you didn't win, we're going to recount everything because now we're following your precedents? I'm sorry about your claim of victory here, but we think we need to have several audits that are going to last 3 years before we allow you to take those seats, because that's where we're heading. It's a complete stalemate. And of course, nobody wants that. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen. There's a possibility that kind of reaction could happen.
I agree completely. And here's the thing with Trump and what he does. Like, you don't go back to normal after you've been broken in the way that he sort of sullied this country. Yeah. Look at Atlantic City, use Atlantic, go to Atlantic City. It's not the same since Trump, his casinos are either torn down or they're shuttered and there's people sleeping on the boardwalk. Like, he decimated that city. Everything he touches dies, to quote Rick Wilson, So like, the violations and the molestation that he sort of did on the democratic process, for lack of a better term, it doesn't just go away. We've now lowered the discourse to a point that it never goes back to where it was before. We're never back to the era of civility. Look what's happening with Elise Stefanik this week. She's now the third most powerful Republican in Congress. She's a lunatic. And
she used to be so sane and sensible, and now it turns out that she's not really sane or sensible, or she's just very strategic. I mean, How do they make this work for themselves? How do they wake up in the morning and say, I'm just going to go and lie to the American people just so I can claim power? I mean, I don't know.
Because it's the only way. It's the future. Trump has showed them the future. It's racism. It's being a troll and a bully, and it's kissing that man's ring. She went to Harvard. Like, she was against the Muslim ban. She was against all this stuff in the beginning. And then she saw how powerful she was, and she has her own ambitions. And she's skewed towards whack job anyway. You know, my family lives up in Albany. Like, there was one time where she said somebody left a note on her car that said, like, die fascist scum or something, which clearly she made herself and just did it because she knew it would go viral. You know, so she understands the cycle of outrage in the way your Matt Gaetz and your Jim Jordans do. It's not about legislating. It's about getting attention and getting Trump's attention, and the people that he commands, having them support you, has become more valuable to these GOP congressmen than actually legislating or operating by their own designs and intelligence. You know, they're not representing their constituents; they're pleasing their master.
Yeah, I don't know if it can't really be about him, right? It can't be about Donald Trump himself. It's got to be about people above him or around him. He's not that powerful at the end of the day, maybe in their mind, but I mean, you know, how powerful can that man have?
Right.
I just keep seeing like a grandfather in diapers, and I mean, like, how much sway is he holding over you? Really?
When I say him, I don't mean him. I mean the people he commands and the people who command Trump. Trump isn't Trump without Bannon, you know, and Roger Stone and all these guys. Trump wants to walk into a room. He wants music to play. He wants to get high, you know, and he wants to talk about his grievances. You know, he doesn't see the big picture. But Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, all these other guys that make a fortune off of Trump, Vladimir Putin, you know, they understand the value in his base. And the people that when I say support Trump, you know, understand that power can protect and promote them too.
Narativ is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative.